All right, I have top of the hour. Are you guys ready to go, or do you want to wait another minute for people to join?
We can go.
All right, starting the broadcast in three, two, one.
Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning and welcome to our June Dementia Dialogue entitled Variety is the Spice of Life. My name is Heather Mulder. I'm the Outreach Senior Manager at Banner Alzheimer's Institute, and I'll also be your moderator for today's discussion. Throughout 2018, we have been in a pursuit of answers in our Dementia Dialogue series. And so this month, we're going to take a slightly different angle where we're going to try to answer the question, how do I honor routine while incorporating activities for my person? I think this is often something that caregivers struggle with because we constantly talk about the importance of having routine for your person, but you don't want to do the same thing every single day. So how can you put some variation in that as well? I'm very pleased to introduce to you our expert today, who is Mary Leonard. Mary currently is the Executive Director and co-founder of the Giving Voice Initiative. She previously served as the Executive Director of the Minnesota Leadership Council on Aging, Director of Aging Programs at the Margaret A. Cargill Foundation, and Executive Director of the Alzheimer's Association, Minnesota North Dakota chapter for nearly 9 years. Mary served on the Alzheimer's Disease Working Group formed by the Minnesota legislature in 2009, which led to a call to prepare Minnesota for the impact of Alzheimer's disease and the creation of ACT on Alzheimer's Collaborative. She is former chair of the ACT's Executive Leadership Council. Mary is also a founding member of the Women Against Alzheimer's, a national coalition of women focused on increasing research and awareness for Alzheimer's. Mary's father passed away in 2009 after a 14-year journey with Alzheimer's and vascular dementia. She also co-facilitates an Alzheimer's caregiver support group with her husband in Minnetonka, Minnesota. Welcome, Mary. Thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Oh, thank you, Heather. It's an honor to be on the call with you.
So let's just jump right in. And I mentioned already when we talk about having routine for a person with dementia, and we constantly preach how important this is, but can you explain to our listeners why is that routine so important for a person with dementia?
You know, I think for those with dementia, having something that they know is going to happen every week or having some structure and consistency really matters. It lowers their anxiety. It gives them a feeling of being safe and somewhat in control of their environment. So having something where they know they're going to do every day or week really keeps people calm.
Definitely. In a world that's becoming less familiar and more out of control, it seems like having something that's predictable for them can be really beneficial. So when it comes to this
Absolutely.
routine, what do you see as being ideal? Like, do we have to wake up at the same time every single morning, or is there some flexibility that can happen with that?
Well, I think it's important to think of it as ways in which people can be stimulated and calm. So we at the Giving Voice Chorus, we have the same day of the week that we have our rehearsals, and we know that people look forward to a particular day of the week and having a routine. But even within our work, we have a structure to it. So we have a beginning point when people start an activity. We have some movement and some changes in the end, and then we have sort of an ending point with social time built around the beginning and the end. And we find that people sort of really do better when they know what to expect, what's coming next. And then within the confines of that structure, there can be variety and change and movement and other things.
Mm-hmm. And which leads us perfectly into our next question. It almost seems like variety and routine are a bit of an oxymoron, but we don't want to keep things so regimented that we're doing the same thing day in and day out. How can we achieve variety in routine?
I think it's as we talked about before, this sort of big picture of having a consistent structure, something that they know they can count on a certain day of the week or hour of the day. And then within that, you can build in variety and change and opportunities for things. What we found with our singers, and again, I'm talking about singing in a chorus, that people can actually learn new things to a degree. So it's sort of a combination or a mixture between having things that are familiar and having things that are challenging and new. And we see that mixture between structure and flexibility really works for people with Alzheimer's as well as it does for us as human beings, that we are stimulated by having something new or challenging. And oftentimes we don't expect people with Alzheimer's to enjoy being challenged or enjoy something new, but that runs counter to our experience, is that they like this mixture of old and new activities or different variety of things and actually flourish when given those opportunities. It might be a little uncertain at first, but once they sort of understand that they are comfortable with it, they actually do really well in that kind of environment where the routine and the variety are in balance with each other.
Mm-hmm. And I know we were talking recently about this, but I came across this term that I think fits beautifully with what you're talking about, the balance between routine and variety, which is the importance of creating a brave space for the person with dementia.
Absolutely. And I love that term because I think that's exactly what we see with our choruses every week, is we see people come and they often come in the door and they're we have morning and afternoon courses, and they might be focused on, getting there and, finding their book. But after singing, they almost are more engaged, and their brain is stimulated, and they open up. And so what we see when you give people a space in which they can make mistakes and be comfortable and participate fully, that they're accepted and cherished just for wherever they are on this path. That courage then creates this brave space where people really flourish, and and that's when I think we see the biggest change in how people perceive their own walk with Alzheimer's. Is they see themselves as more capable and accepted, and their own idea of who they are changes. And that's kind of the start of changing stigma, is when the person with the disease see themselves differently, and the caregiver interacts differently, and the family starts to see them differently. So I think having that space where I can be myself again, and I can laugh and cry and remember or forget and be loved nevertheless is really important.
Definitely. And you've mentioned giving voice a couple times now, and I want to learn more about it in a few minutes. But I also want to talk about the importance of having creative activities, using the arts. How can those sorts of things be integrated into everyday life?
I think I can talk a lot to music, but I know there is a lot of research done by Gene Cohen and some others. There's the National Center for Creative Aging. But over and over and over again, research has shown that people in their older years, I'm old, can actually not learn new information, but the creativity is still there, and in fact may even be greater than when we were young, because we don't have the same restrictions on thinking that it has to be perfect, and we can just enjoy the act of being creative. and they've seen how the brain is stimulated. Both the left side and the right side of the brain is stimulated when you create something. So if you, let's just stay with music for a moment, when you play an instrument or sing a song, both sides of the brain are stimulated on the MRI. And I think there's few activities that someone can do later in their years where it's like you have this brain fireworks going on. And I think that it releases endorphins into your system, it improves mood, but it also stimulates the brain so that you can learn more information and enjoy it. There's a pleasure center that gets stimulated when you participate in creative arts. And that is very true of people with dementia or Alzheimer's and other dementias that we've seen.
Oh, how interesting. And I think through our work with different arts engagement programs, many of the ones that we work with are creating artwork, and it's incredible to see people who have never been involved in this medium just really take to it, and even surprising their caregiver or even potentially their lifelong partner that they're taking to this activity.
Absolutely. We see that with people with music. People come to us and they've never sang since elementary school, and all of a sudden they're a singer, and they find that they can sing. I think we're finding more and more that anyone is really able to sing and use their voice. And the people that love to sing and people who've never sang find the same benefit in the brain that stimulates memory and emotion as those who haven't. So it's seemingly, if you still have breath, you can still participate in something like music or in a chorus or a sing-along. And, it doesn't have to be a chorus as formal as giving voice. It can be singing along to the radio. It can be, the iPods that you've seen people use in assisted living or nursing homes to stimulate music. You can make music part of getting dressed in the morning. You can have music to get you up, that music that gives you energy, and then later on night music that can calm you down. But the act of participating in that music is really important. And I think we're just learning the power of the aging brain, and particularly the person with dementia and the impact on their brain. Because the damage of Alzheimer's does not impact those parts of the brain that participate in music or other creative endeavors, people can create well into mid and late stages of Alzheimer's that we've seen.
And I think too, I like that you brought up that lack of boundaries that sometimes people with dementia can have, where we hold ourselves back. We hold ourselves to a certain standard for most of our adult lives. And when someone develops dementia, sometimes that hesitancy can start to fall away. And
we sort of laugh about that. We say, "Oh, our filters are gone, and we can just be who we are."
Yes, exactly. And I can even
see refreshing and renewing.
Absolutely, and it gives permission for other people involved to be that way too.
Yes, and particularly the caregivers. The caregivers will say to us that they find their own sense of peace and relaxation in creating, and so. I often, they're there because they will believe that their loved one will benefit from participating in this activity. But then they find themselves, they find new friends, they find a space where they can relax, and that someone else is taking care of all of the details so that they can just enjoy the activity, and their person is enjoying the activity as well. And that's something we hear from caregivers all the time, how wonderful it is to participate in activity with somewhat of a abandon and not have to worry about is everything kind of being taken care of. And I think the arts give us that opportunity, that brave space to really participate without worry of, what's going to happen, in the next 5 minutes, and do I have to control that? They don't have to. They can just be part of being in a group.
Hmm.
sing in a chorus.
And a lot of times, I'll again speak to our arts engagement program where there's arts making. You can almost see this sort of snowball. I'll give you an example. We had one gentleman who was very involved in a art making program that we work on, and it ended up that his wife, who was his caregiver, then brought it home with them and started getting him the adult
Oh,
coloring
wonderful.
books and all sorts of different artistic expression modalities for him, and it just became a passion project for him and something that he could fill his day with. And so you can
Oh,
see
that's
these engaging in these programs becoming much bigger.
We see that with some of our singers. We do a practice CD. So the songs that we're singing in a semester are given to them on a CD, and they can take it home and sing along with it every day or whenever they want. But they
Hmm.
also share it with their grandchildren. So their grandchildren will come over and they'll sing these songs with them. And sometimes they're show tunes, Broadway or things like that, Beatles, and they find there's this whole new connection they can make to other people just
Hmm.
by having that music part of their everyday life.
Yeah, it's incredible to hear that broader impact, as we mentioned. We've talked a lot about bringing the creative activities into the home, but I know another big component of giving voice in a lot of these sorts of engagement programs is the social aspect of it. Can you speak to the social aspect of what people are experiencing as part of these choirs?
Absolutely. We are acutely aware here in Minnesota of the impact of social isolation on people with dementia and their caregivers. And the devastating effects it can have on people's health outcomes when they're isolated. And we've heard many of our singers and caregivers talk about, being in the shadows or, friends never coming by anymore. And when they come to this chorus, they are welcomed and included, and we're all singers. We're not caregivers, people with disease, and volunteers. We're all singers, and it's all up to us to make this music. So there's this sort of melding of people back to who they were originally, and we build in social time, both at the front end of our rehearsal for a half hour and then at the end of rehearsal. So people have a chance to visit, catch up with each other, make new friends. I've never seen anything quite like it where I'll see five guys with Alzheimer's stand in the corners with their cup of coffee and their cookies and just
Hmm.
talk for 20 minutes. I mean,
Hmm.
you just it's and they are enjoying each other and laughing and you think, wow, how often do we get the chance once we have the diagnosis, one, to make new friends, but to find people to talk to and socialize with. So the choir is so much more than producing music. It creates a whole new community of people who sort of understand and care for each other and builds in that social time. And so I think anything where you can do something together, we sing together, and that the act of singing together builds those bonds. But any opportunity to have creative opportunity to bring people together, I think, and build in that social time,
Hmm.
not just focused on the outcome, but on the process itself. We let our singers decide whether they want to perform in the concert or not, because the weekly rehearsal, those 2 hours when we're together, it's really the most important thing. Not the end product of singing perfectly in a concert hall.
Hmm.
And we make sure that they understand that it's the week by week building of this community that's more important, and that they're part of it.
And I love that you brought that up. The process, not the outcome, is the important part, which I think is part of our holding ourselves back, is that we get so focused on the outcome of whatever activity we're doing with our person. We're thinking of the end result. We're not thinking of
Hmm.
the journey to get there.
Right. And I think that if you we sort of intentionally build in the idea that people have to be empowered to give feedback. So there's a statement in our in every chorus we are part of the, there's no wrong in this room. It gives people the opportunity to relax and to feel like there isn't going to be a test at the end. There's no, I don't pass or fail this if I sing a wrong note or we, forgot what we learned last week and we have to relearn it this week. It's all okay. There's this sort of overwhelming sense of we're in this together, and that, how often as adults do we get that freedom to be in a brave space? I think we create a really important venue for people with Alzheimer's and caregivers.
Mm-hmm. And I had the great pleasure of coming and seeing the Giving Voice Chorus perform over the weekend. And I want to learn more. I want you to tell our listeners more about it in just a moment. But I think one of the songs that really spoke to me, that I think also speaks to the importance, or speaks to social isolation, was the Ballad of the Dinghy.
Yes.
Can you explain that a little?
Absolutely. We had the American Composers Forum picked Giving Voice Chorus as their 2018 residency for a composer and a poet. And so we had with us a composer and a poet the last 18 months, and they came to our rehearsals and they talked to all of our caregivers and people with the disease, and they just really were with us. And in one of these focus groups, there was a caregiver who described what taking care of her partner with Alzheimer's was like. And it was like when she was growing up in Maine in the summer, and she would look out from these cliffs on the Maine coast, and she'd see these little boats sort of being tossed in the waves out on the ocean. And she said often caregiving can really feel that way, that you're in this tiny boat in this big ocean and you're being tossed around, and it's really, really hard. And the image she had was that this chorus and being with all the other caregivers and people with the disease was like everyone was in their dinghy, and then the fog clears and you're in a harbor with all these other dinghies in your home, and you belong and you're safe. And for today, and the words kind of go, today the waters are calmer, today the wind is not so strong, today our friends all surround us, today we know we belong. And I think that's what we are all looking for on this journey. And as caregivers and people with the disease, we want to feel that sort of place where we're still in our own dinghy, but can be in a harbor with others, and enjoy those moments together. And that's the Ballad of the Dinghy. And we sang that song, and of course we cry. All of us in this chorus cry every time we sing it, but we got a chance to sing it for our family and friends this weekend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I found that song to just be so poignant. So Mary, in the last few minutes that we have together, tell all of us about what is Giving Voice.
So Giving Voice was created on the idea that our brains are still important as we age and go through Alzheimer's. And we created a chorus in 2014 on that research that the music is still held in the brain, that's not damaged, and that people can still sing. And that's based on a strength. And we started this chorus. We did not know if it would work. And we found out that not only does it work, but it gives a new meaning to changing the stigma and giving people something that they can do and contribute to. So these choruses, there's no singing experience required. There's a paid choral director who understands Alzheimer's and aging and is able to adapt music and rehearsals to them. We have weekly rehearsals that have structure and sharing. We have trained dementia-friendly volunteers that come every week and help us make the chorus work. And then we always have public performances, like we just talked about, where not only do we get together every week and rehearse, but we show the public that we've learned this new music, and we stand in front of everyone and sing. And those performances are really powerful ways to say we're still here and we still have something to give. The choruses work in social time with cookies, and we sing familiar and new music. And that's been an aha to learn new music. And often the music can be adapted so that people can sing it, even if it can be challenging. We started with one chorus of about 30 people. We now have 4 in the Twin Cities and another 21 around the country that we've helped inspire and or equip. And we find that these choruses bring joy and purpose and community understanding when we have the chance to form them and perform. So our vision, obviously, is beyond just world domination of having everyone sing together, but it is really to have people understand the power of music and the brain and what singing together in the community can really mean for those with Alzheimer's and their caregivers.
And so you mentioned a few choirs happening in the Twin Cities, which is Minnesota, Minneapolis, St. Paul, 21
Correct.
additional choruses around the country. If people are interested in learning more, where can they go?
They can go to our website. It's givingvoicechorus.org. And on there is a toolkit, a free toolkit that we've put together from our experience in starting this chorus that really helps organizations and individuals get started doing these courses. So we've had hundreds of people download this toolkit, and we know that it's really helping other communities in Houston and Chicago and Virginia and even Australia. They've downloaded the toolkit and are using it there to start courses like this and all over the place. And the courses don't have to be large like the ones here in the Twin Cities. You can start with a dozen people coming together every week and singing, and as people hear about it and they experience it, it tends to grow and grow and grow.
Well, I look forward to working with you, Mary, to get some of these choirs happening in the Phoenix area as well.
That would be terrific, Heather. And I don't think you mentioned, but you are on our board of directors. So you are part of the bigger strategic vision for Giving Voice. And I look forward to working with the Phoenix community and you on that.
Yes, I'm invested. Well, we just have about one more minute left with each other. Mary, do you have any final comments about that concert that happened over the weekend?
You know, I would tell you that one of the things that the feedback from our family and friends was how important it was to see the dignity that the concert gave to people singing in it. And I think that's such an important thing, and it's a word we don't often use anymore, but there's a way in which to participate and create programs that really engage the people with Alzheimer's in a way that cherishes them and adapts strengths. And it's Giving Voice Chorus early on, and I would encourage that on any program that you're involved in, is to ask the people with dementia what matters to them and what works for them. And we did that early on when we were creating Giving Voice, and we continue to do it in listening sessions. And the music we sing is really the music that people with dementia know and enjoy. And so it's not something we do for those with dementia. It's something we do with and because, and they're part of who we are. So I just think that's a really, I know here in Minnesota we've done a lot of programming for, but we haven't always done programming with. So I would just encourage you to think differently a little bit about how people with Alzheimer's can participate in the creation of programming.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much, Mary, for your time with us this morning. I think you gave us some really good food for thought when considering routine and variety. Some things that stood out to me were focusing on the process, not the outcome. And then just what you mentioned now, do with, not for. We want to be next to our person and not taking over things and doing things for them. We want them to be a part of the process, and that's good for both of us.
Absolutely. Yes, well, best wishes.
Thank you so much, Mary.
Your work.
Thank you.
And
And I want
I
to
look forward.
invite our attendees to join us next month on July 18th, where we're going to be discussing First on the Scene. And the question that we're going to be tackling is, what can they learn about dementia from people who respond in crisis? To let you know, today's session has been recorded and it will be posted on our website within 48 hours of the end of today's session. In addition, the concert that we were referencing was recorded, and we will send you a link to some clips for that as well, so you can get a picture of what Giving Voice is doing in the Minnesota area. Thank you all for attending Dementia Dialogues this morning, where we bring the dementia education to you.